talking to a man who's written many stories about the story of his own life.
Welcome to Riches Revealed, revealing how to improve your finances and lead a richer life. Coming to you from scruffy little city of Knoxville, Tennessee, is certified financial planner Jack Martin.
Today, I think we have a really interesting guest for you. Today, we have got somebody who has really led an interesting, successful life and managed to bring himself out of a situation where he grew up in poverty and managed to raise a family and lead a successful career. And he is also an author of a book as well called Butler County Memories by Elmo Lincoln Martin. So I'm going to also tell the audience that this interesting person is also my grandfather. So if you hear me referring to him as Grandpa, that's why. So, Grandpa, can you tell me how you got the name, by the way, of Elmo?
I can tell you that. Got the name Elmo Lincoln in the year 1920. My father was going to college in Bowling Green, and my mother was pregnant with me about 8 months, and he took her down to the movies at the square. Well, the movie was a Tarzan movie, and of course, my mom had never seen anything like a movie before, so she was so taken with Elmo Lincoln. When I was born about a month later, she tagged me with that name. But it's been a pretty good name. It helped me a lot in life.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique name. You are 101 now.
That is correct.
Right. So you've seen a lot of things in your life, and that's one of the reasons that I definitely wanted to have you on the show. So you grew up poor, and a lot of people say they didn't know they were poor. Did you know you were poor?
I thought everybody lived the same as we did.
Right.
We lived on a farm down in Butler County that my grandmother gave to my mother when she got married, and I grew up on that farm.
It's in Butler County, Kentucky.
Butler County, Kentucky, yeah.
Right. So the home that you grew up in had no electricity?
No plumbing, no running water, no electricity. There were 4 of us kids, and we'd keep the windows broken out most of the time. So got a lot of fresh air.
Well, I think I remember you telling me, too, that in the wintertime, you would wake up and the water that you would have around the house would be frozen. So it literally would get down to freezing temperatures at night.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we had a potbelly stove that burned coal.
Right.
But the coal heat burned it out, so it wasn't usable anymore.
So it like burned out the side of the metal in the stove? Yeah.
So my dad had a friend that was a pretty good mechanic, and he'd taken a 50-gallon drum and made a heating stove out of it.
Right.
So my dad had him make one for us. Take a 50-gallon, cut a hole in for the smokestack, use a plug for air in the bottom, cut a door for the wood to go in, and we use that, yeah.
So in the summertime, did it get really hot there in the summertime or not?
You have very hot days in Kentucky. Yeah, very hot. Yeah. I might tell you about the first inside plumbing.
Yes, tell that one.
Yeah. I was working for one of the wealthy guys in Morgantown when I was about 17.
Right.
And he had a big farm down on Green River, and his mother lived down there. And he hired me to go down and help his mother with the cattle and all that stuff, you know. And he'd take me down in his car and then across the river and help his mother. Well, this one particular day, he got busy and he couldn't take me. And so he had a nice big motel or hotel with rooms up, business down and rooms up. He says, go over and take one of my rooms for the night. And we'll take you down there tomorrow. Okay. So I got up in the room And what do you know? It had plumbing in it. It had a toilet.
You had
It's-
never really seen that before.
First toilet I'd ever seen.
Wow.
It seems so strange doing that kind of work in a house. you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Plumbing first time. 17. Yeah.
So, I mean, you've seen a lot of changes in your life.
I've lived in a great time.
Yes.
Great time. Been wonderful life. Yeah.
So, I think you've told me you had what did you call it? An overland vehicle?
My dad did buy a 25 model
Okay.
Overland car.
Okay.
My dad raised some chickens. There was a garage building there, but the chickens took the garage building away.
Gotcha.
So the car had to set out under a big sycamore tree. And it was had a convertible top in 1925. And that wore out fairly soon. And the water and the season. Matter of fact, he lost one of his neighbors. The side fell off the car, and the neighbor fell in the mud. Yeah.
Didn't you tell me you and your brother were working on the vehicle at one point too, and some little incident happened there?
Well, we could take the key and turn it on, and it would move the car
Mm-hmm.
backwards and forth.
Okay.
So we were playing with that for a while. And my brother, he was probably 12 or so at that time. He says, I want to see if I can sit down here and see if I can hold the wheel. So you do the driving, you put it in the shift and forward and turn the key on, and I'll try to hold the wheel.
Right.
Well, I forgot to put it in drive and left it reverse, and when I turned it off, the car backed right up on his stomach. Skinned him up a bit, but we didn't dare tell the parents we'd fooled with it, so he had to suffer getting his skin put back together by himself.
So no injuries to him other than just kind of getting
serious.
Because I'm pretty sure that it must have been a much lighter vehicle than today's cars.
You wouldn't want to have one of those. No.
But it wasn't very reliable either, was it? Like even aside from the fact that the top was all gone.
The motor was about the size of a shoebox.
Right. Right.
And the reason the neighbor fell out of the car because passenger side, the door and so forth, that fell off. And the reason it fell off was had a steel frame and 2x4 screwed to the steel frame, and then the body part of the car was nailed to the 2x4. Yeah, and when the rain and everything got there, that's what the 2x4 rotted and caused it to fall off.
So this car was built from the factory with a wooden frame, a 2x4 frame on it.
Yeah, but that's the way it was built.
Wow.
Yeah.
A little bit different than the way they build them today.
Well, it's kind of strange. You leave it set out. He might have known to spoil the upholstery and everything. It was 2-passenger car.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad and my mom would ride in there with my 2 sisters who were smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went somewhere, my brother and I would ride on the running board. Yeah. And it would go 35 miles an hour downhill. I remember my dad's doing that and asking my mother how she likes all that speed.
Yeah, I know. But it's crazy to think, too, that nowadays we don't even want people to drive without seatbelts, and you kids were just hanging on to the side of the car.
Yeah. Well, you could only use it in the summer months because the roads were impossible. Muddy, you couldn't use it in the winter months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did your parents do? What were they like? What did they do for work?
But my dad was a school teacher to start with. After he got through college here, in fact, I was his one of his students my first 2 years.
Okay.
But then he decided that he didn't want to teach school, I guess, so he just started working on the farm, raising chickens and that kind of stuff.
And what was your mom doing?
My mom's just a housekeeper.
And you had one brother and two sisters?
That is correct.
And they all lived there at the house with
They
you?
all lived in the house. Yeah.
And what was that like?
Well, the house had one big bedroom, a hall in the middle, and a kitchen part. Well, they were probably 12 by 12s and size. And the hall was wide enough for a bed. And then the kitchen was another 12 by 12, yeah. And you have to cut wood and build a fire and to cook anything, pretty primitive type of life.
And so you were living in a fairly primitive home. What was the town like? Did you have neighbors right there?
Well, there were 12 families living on the road when I was there, and 50% of them made moonshine, and the other 50% just farmed and raised everything they needed that way, yeah.
So did you ever wind up in the moonshine business yourself?
Well, some of my papers that have written my story, they said I was in the moonshine business, and I was kind of angry about that because I didn't tell them I was in the moonshine business.
Mm-hmm.
At first thought I never did, but one time our neighbor needed a couple 10-gallon kegs of whiskey carried up on the hill because it was muddy, you couldn't get a car down there. Asked my dad if he could hire my brother and I to carry the kegs up.
Yeah.
And we did. We carried them up there for him. And he gave us 50 cents apiece for doing that. And then after I thought about that a bit, maybe the paper was right. Maybe I was in the moonshine business.
Right.
I got 50 cents out of it one time.
50 cents? Was that pretty good for the time?
Have to work all day for 50 cents.
Wow. Yeah.
If you had to work on the farm or somebody hires you, 50 cents.
Right. So when did you meet Grandma?
I met Ruth. I went up to Michigan to visit my sister. Yeah. She was pretty much an orphan. Didn't have much of anybody to help her. Parents had all passed away.
Where did you meet?
I'm trying to think of the name of the little town. Fairly close to Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We lived together for 63 years.
Right.
And had 4 kids, Sharon, Susie, Jimmy, and Richard.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them are alive except James. He got killed in an automobile accident.
Yeah. Right. So you met Grandma, and then what kind of happened after that? And I do want the audience to understand, I want to touch on Grandpa's history because it really informs the book. So the book, Butler County Memories, is,
Well,
you can kind of describe it, Grandpa, but it really touches upon a lot of the past that you grew up in. It started off when you were in your, late 80s, writing a series of articles for the newspaper, correct?
I did. I wrote 100 and some articles for the Morgantown Banner. From all those stories, where the book came from,
Yeah.
Put the stories all in a book and publish it, yeah.
So it's Butler County Memories is a collection of those short stories, which a lot of it is informed by what things were like growing up for you as a kid.
Oh, my family was pretty close-knit family, and the family took good care of us under the circumstances. It was a good family. And we would work on the farm when I was young, help my dad with the garden, chicken, all that thing. Then I liked to go to school. My dad was teacher, as I mentioned, my first 2 years.
How many kids were in the school?
35 or so most of the time.
Did you have any students that you liked more than others? Any favorites?
Well, as a boy about 12 or so, I was desperately in love with a little girl named Pauline.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I like to go to school, and if I'd done something wrong and they want to punish me, they'd say, well, you got to stay at home today to cut wood, and you won't get to go to school today.
So were you punished and have to cut wood very often?
Not very. Matter of fact, I was a pretty easy kid. My parents always told me. Stayed out of trouble.
Yeah. So what happened after you met Grandma, and then what happened after that?
Well, we settled in Louisville for a while, and I got a job in a factory, and the war was going on at that time.
So what year are we talking about right there?
1942. And I worked in this machine shop, and then when they drafted me into the Army, I went down to Camp Van Dorn down in Mississippi for training. Ruth kind of followed me along while I was doing that.
They had some quarters where she could stay on base?
No, we would rent a place for her. Yeah.
Okay. Were any of the kids born at that point?
Sharon. Over to Camp Maxey, Texas for more training. 1944, we shipped out to Europe.
And when you went over to Europe, where did you head?
We landed in Scotland, stayed there a day or two, moved on down to England proper. Took a few days, took the boat to France. It was after D-Day.
Yeah.
But we took the boat over, and a couple of days we were up on the front line. Yeah.
So how were you feeling about the whole thing, about being drafted and going over there?
Well, I'd like to help my country. I thought it was necessary, you know. So we relieved the 9th Division along the Siegfried Line up there between Belgium and Germany.
And what was your unit?
99th Infantry Division. It was a new division scattered out along the front line because there wasn't much going on there. But then the Battle of the Bulge came, and we were there, and right in the middle of it. We were going to have breakfast one morning because we'd been on the front line for a month. They rotate the regiments, 2 up front, 1 in reserve. We were on reserve, kind of a break. And the chow wagon was there, and we were going to have breakfast. We were in a little old train station. We call it Buckhole Station. Yeah. Our first sergeant, he was up there and upstairs, and he saw somebody coming down the railroad track, and he thought it was part of L Company that was going to share breakfast with us.
Right.
It got a little closer, turned out to be a German, and that was the first shot he fired, killed that German, and then the fog started to lift, and the Germans all over the place there. Yeah. When you're surrounded, life is a different sort of thing, you know.
Right.
You don't know what to do, or your commanders were confused, and we kept coming back, trying to get out of the surrounding condition. Well, a matter of fact, that first day the battle started, we lost 32 of our men in that battle. But we stopped the Germans from doing what they wanted to do. They wanted to be down into France right away.
Right.
And cut off our supplies and all that stuff, yeah. But my division done a great job at holding them back for 2 days. That's what killed their effort to be successful. They couldn't move anymore, yeah.
And I know that you told a story occasionally about a kid in a wood pile. I think you were trying to hide from like a machine gun or something, right?
Well, that was on the first day. After the battle started, you didn't have time to organize. You just grab your gun and run out and see who you can shoot, you know?
Right.
Well, there was a log pile there, not too far from the building, so myself and 2 other guys, not part of my squad, all 3 of us laid down behind this log pile. And when the fog came up, all these Germans were ganged up there in the opening, and we were pouring the bullets into them. Yeah. Well, they didn't like that, so they turned the machine gun on the log pile, and we were using our weapons, and the guy right next door on my right side says, I was a staff sergeant, he says, Sergeant, my leg shot off. I could smell the burn of the clothing where the bullet had done that.
Hmm.
But I looked over at him. His leg was fine. There's nothing wrong with his leg. He was feeling back in his pocket, and he pulled out his spoon, mess spoon, and the bullet had hit the belly of the spoon, put a crease in it, and it slapped him in the butt, and he thought his leg was gone, but he was okay.
See, that's one of those stories that you think only occurs in the movies, right?
Well, yeah, that's
But
right.
it's real, yeah.
Well, the German didn't get us out of the log pile with a machine gun, so they turned the mortars on us.
Mm-hmm.
Mortars is a tube thing that projects a projectile that explodes.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, they kind of have to zero them in. They don't usually hit their target with the first round out of that weapon.
Right.
So they bracket it, they change it. Usually it went over for the second shot. First shot's second, maybe short, but that's the way they zero in the log pile. And being busy as we were, and I was a sergeant, I probably should have known it was going to happen, but
Right.
it didn't cross my mind. Part of my group was in the woods over there about 30 yards away, and they hollered, "Run, Sergeant Martin, run."
Right.
So I took their word for it and ran for the woods, but he still tried to kill us with a machine gun. It was kicking up the snow and mud as we went.
Right.
But we got over there in time to look back and watch the log pile
Just blow up.
blow up. Yeah.
Yeah, you were lucky on that one.
Charm life I've led. Lived through things like that.
Yes. Yes. But you'd mentioned to me something about a kid in a wood pile, and you didn't have the heart to kill him because he was so young.
There was a young looking, when I first got to the wood pile, looked like he was about 17. I think they had sent him as a scout to see what was down there,
Yeah.
and he probably got scared and crawled under the log pile.
Right.
But I couldn't shoot him. He looked too much like a kid, but I'm sure the mortar killed him.
Yeah. You didn't really talk much about the war or anything after you came back.
Well, most people don't, who's been in those situations, once they kind of try to put it away out of their mind. Let's don't try to live it. Let's try to live forward from that. Yeah.
Right. So you talked about it a little bit more, I think, as you got a little bit older. Or was it just that you felt it was something you wanted to talk about a little more?
As I got a little older, everybody said I could write a book about it, but I don't want to go into all the details.
Right.
No. So that's kind of the story of my war days.
So you wound up getting frostbite, and so is that what got you sent back? Was the frostbite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trench foot, they called it. It happened to a lot of us guys. Can't get dry. Temperature, as I mentioned, is very cold. So nothing to do but freeze.
Right.
Yeah. Frostbite got me. To protect myself from artillery, I had to dive under a bridge, had water in it, and I got clothes all wet. But by then we were already surrounded with the Germans. No place to change, no temperature 10 above zero, So I was lucky that my lieutenant says, "You better get back here before your feet freeze totally off and you lose them."
Mm-hmm.
So I got back in that way, yeah.
So you didn't get to go back, though, right away.
I was on the front line about 2 months.
Oh, wow.
About 2 months, yeah.
Okay.
Well, once I found out my feet was freezing and my skin was freezing in other places too, yeah. Then they took me back to the hospital, or back in France. They got me on an ambulance and we went back into Paris. And they started working on me to try to save my feet in the hospital. One other little thing about being saved from serious injury and so forth, and one of maybe the second or third day after the bulge, we'd keep having to be pushed back, and we had moved back a ways and started digging foxholes. We just about got them all finished when captain says, just grab everything. Don't grab anything heavy, just your clothes, and run backward, And we were doing that. My platoon sergeant was running right in front of me, and with the shells breaking the light, you could see, exploding shells all around. He says, let's go this way to the left. For some reason, I didn't do that. Didn't go to the left. I turned to the right. And some other people had turned to the right, some went to the left. My staff sergeant that went to the left, he got captured. We went back, and we found a unit of, I think, the 2nd Division that was going back, and we joined with them and got back out. Yeah. You're not supposed to defy your sergeant, but it was a good thing I did. Yeah.
And you don't even know why you did it?
No, don't have the faintest. Maybe instinct says, that's where the Germans are. I could see their tanks over there to the left, earlier in the day, but this was at night. But I knew they were over that way, but I don't really remember saying, I've got to go this way because they're there, but for some reason I went that way, yeah.
How do you know your staff sergeant got captured?
Oh, it's
part of the records of the battle? Okay.
Yeah, we knew, people knew he was captured, his friends, yeah.
Didn't you tell me at one point that you'd actually slept through some shelling? I think you told me you woke up and the tops of the trees had all been blown off.
When I went to the right, we got back to Elsenborn Ridge, and that would become a major line of defense. Elsenborn Ridge did. So we got a foxhole dug. I hadn't had any sleep for 3 days and nights. Woke up one morning, and officers were looking all around my area for duds from artillery shells and stuff. And he said to me, they sure poured them on last night, didn't they? And I never did even hear it,
Amazing. Right.
I didn't know they'd done a big artillery barrage on us, yeah.
Wow.
Pretty sleepy when that happens.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So after you came back from the war, you told me at one point that, you never wanted to be cold like that again, but you somehow wound up moving up to Michigan. So why did you, when you got back to the United States, why did you go up to Michigan?
I don't think I'm repeating, but when I got back from the war, my hometown here, Bowling Green, Morgantown, there was only 2 jobs available, making moonshine or digging coal.
Right.
So I didn't want to do either one of those, so put the family on the train and went to Michigan, got a job in a factory that made automobile trim.
What company was that?
Doler, company named Doler Jarvis.
How did you find out about the job?
I guess one of the big factories there in Grand Rapids.
But I think you decided to move up to Michigan and you didn't even have a job waiting for you, right?
I didn't even know anybody there.
Did that feel like a risk to you? Or do you feel like you had no choice?
What I'd been through wasn't difficult at all.
Right.
You get hardened to taking chances, yeah. It was a nice company, and I worked for them 20 years. When I started working in the plant, working on what we call the buffing department, where we polished the stuff so we could plate it and make it chrome-plated, nickel, copper chrome. And every once in a while, the personnel manager would stop and talk to me, and he would say, don't you want to come and join the management? I said, no, I'm okay here. I don't want to do that. So I was elected the chief steward of the union. Big job. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm happy here. But for some reason, I don't think I was tough enough on management. So they voted me out of that job. The next time he came by and said, do you want to join the company? I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I joined management and then got into the sales part of it, selling their parts.
Did you know that you would be good at sales? What made you even want to consider going into sales?
Well, I think the company thought I'd be good in sales. That's why they gave me the job, to go down to Detroit and talk to the buyers down there, engineers down there, yeah. And I was pretty successful at it, yeah.
So what do you think made you successful at it?
Yeah, I knew my product, so that's why I sold so much, I guess, yeah.
I remember you telling me at one point that sales was pretty easy. You just sit and have a conversation with somebody, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of what I kind of took from it was that was sort of your magic was that you were relaxed about it and you were just having a conversation about it.
I was always relaxed,
And
yeah.
you knew your product really well
Yeah.
too, because I know that you could tell me about how the parts were made at your other businesses,
Yeah.
like when you were working for Rapid Purge, you could tell all about how the plastic extrusion process was done as well.
Well, Rapid Purge came in after I left Doler and set up my own business called Manufacturing Agent.
Mhm.
I knew all the people in the automobile business, General Electric. I dealt with all of those. So I quit Doler and started my manufacturing business. And I had 13 companies that I sold for, plastics, stampings, all of those things that automobile people need. And it was very successful for me.
But that must have been hard to make a decision to leave
It
Doler.
was difficult.
So you left Doler and you started your own manufacturing rep. So how long did you do that for?
Well, I was still doing it when I was 80 years old. Rapid Purge was one of the last ones I had.
And so tell them what Rapid Purge did.
Well, Rapid Purge made a product that cleaned plastic machines. Plastic machines make a plastic part. You run it through this machine and it melts it and then runs it into the mold and it comes out what you want. And those machines causes charred material. It'll ruin the product to have that charred material in
You're right.
there.
It'll stick to the inside of the mold.
Yeah, when it's molded, you could see it in the part.
Right.
And Rapid Purge's product, you run that through there when you want to change colors or you're having the charred burn material. Run that through there and it would clean it out. Yeah. And then you could run your parts without having any burn condition in them. Colored, mixed colors from the other run. You need to clean that out too.
Right. That was a very successful product for you.
We got along good. Just one of the 13. As I got a little older, I kind of settled down not to do too many. And gradually, the 13, most of them went away. And the good one I had left was Rapid Purge. Yeah. I had a couple of other ones that maybe bolts and nuts or something that wasn't very profitable for me. I had around 300 customers I could call on. Sometimes I never got in because they'd say, well, we have our own method of keeping our machine clean. We don't need you. Like every other product or like every other business that had competition, other people made a product to try to do that too. Rapid Purge was a chemical type. Others had friction scrubbers to try to clean them out. So you had to overcome those. It was a better product than competition.
So you thought it was a better product and you would actually demonstrate it and how it would clean?
I would go in sometimes and help them, watch them, tell them how to do it. Yeah.
And that's what I was getting at earlier about how one of the ways that you were successful in sales is that you really knew your product well.
My education in the automobile and that business, that helped me a great deal. Yeah. Because I'd been through it all with Doler before. Yeah.
So we're doing that all the way up through your 80s.
Oh,
you
yeah.
said.
Yeah.
That kind of is leading us up to when you started writing. So how did you go from doing the Rapid Purge to deciding to start writing articles for the newspaper?
My family always wanted me to tell them my stories in life. And they said, I know you tell us about it, but write it down for us so we can read it. So I started writing the stories down that's in the book, and paper heard about it, Morgantown paper, the weekly paper, and they run my story.
How did they hear about it?
A lot of people were still remembered me, and somebody must have told them about it, you know. Yeah, so they called me.
Now you were living in Knoxville at that
I
time.
living in Tennessee at that time,
Right.
yeah.
But you started writing the articles for Butler County's paper, correct?
Yeah, pretty soon I had a folder about this thick of stories, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
About what is
Uh-huh.
that, an inch thick or something of stories. But did you know when you started writing that it was going to become such a big thing for you?
Didn't have the faintest idea. Once everybody seen them in the paper, the family, they says, you got to get them in a book. Good stories. Some of the stories, people would email me and tell me how good they were. They didn't agree all the time on which one was good. One of the stories in the book is called Mystic Winds. Some people never heard of it, but the way I processed it and everything about it, more people thought that was the best story I'd ever written.
When I've read your stories, I've always been so impressed with the talent level as a writer. When you write, you're not writing just about facts. You tell it in a unique and interesting way.
That's what they understand it, they say. You know?
Right.
They tell me, the way you tell it makes me think I was there.
So the series of articles that you started writing, they were mostly about the way you view life and about what your childhood was like.
Yeah, the childhood life, yeah.
Yeah, some words of wisdom in there as well.
Yeah.
So you always had a way of looking at things a little differently than other
I
people.
guess, yeah.
Right. So how did you wind up going from writing the articles and deciding to put them into a book?
My family pushed me, Lena, Dee Dee, kids and grandkids, and friends.
And so as far as the book, you went through Amazon to get it published, correct?
Well, it was an Amazon subsidiary company that done the publishing of it.
And that's where people can get your book?
Go to the computer and say, Butler County Memories or Amazon Books, Butler County Memory, and you get a whole story about it. Yeah.
I think your book is available as a downloadable book, like an electronic book as well, is it not?
Oh, they do that. Yeah.
So what have you done as far as sales? You've also gone about selling the book at local places as well.
Barnes and Noble, they don't handle it there, but they'll buy it for you. And I put it in some of the stores. Antique stores seem to be a pretty good place.
So you wound up moving from Tennessee back here to where we're doing this interview today, here in the Morgantown, Butler County area. People know you in the area, and if you do book signings, lots of people show up. When you started writing the articles, did you ever imagine it would become like that, where you would become so well known?
Never give it a thought, I don't think. The average person who writes a book like I did, their sales usually turn out to be about 50 books.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You've told me that you are also working on another book. Can you tell me about the book that you've got coming up as well?
The new book is titled Kentucky's Sweet and Bitter Land. Touches on a lot of things about the history of the country. Growing up in Kentucky, I've seen the good and bad parts of it. And my new book is going to explain a lot of things that people hadn't heard about yet about Kentucky. Some of it's sweet, some of it's bitter, and that's what the book is going to be about. Probably be published around this fall.
Okay, so the fall of 2022.
Lots of things that I know about, and there's, of course, history of some wars and all the things that happened to the settlers that came through the Cumberland Gap. Daniel Boone, now Daniel wasn't the first guy to settle in Kentucky, but a fellow by the name of Dr. Thomas Walker. He was way ahead of Daniel Boone coming to Kentucky, and he's the one that named Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Lake. He named those all because he was an Englishman. I thought I might explain it so people could understand it better. Like they say, they understand my writing different from other people.
Yes. I want to just ask you kind of some general philosophical questions right now. So you managed to bring yourself out of poverty and have this really successful life. Are there some secrets to your success that you can pass on to people? Some words of wisdom that made you successful?
Well, I guess the first thing, you kind of have to keep the door open for some kind of an opportunity. I think that was the thing that got me going. I'm not chinchy, but I only spend my money on things that have value and save the money. Interest has helped me a lot to get ahead because I save my money and put it in the bank, pay interest on it.
During your career, was there some secret to staying motivated?
I always had that drive. If it had $1 in it, I'd find a way of getting it.
And where do you think that came from?
Probably the way I was raised. I didn't want to go through what the people that raised me in the country was doing, how many poor people, children, have to go barefoot and all that stuff. I didn't want to follow that. Look for something bigger and better.
But some people who grew up that way stayed that way.
Oh, the majority of them. Yeah. I refused to do that. I says, I'm going to make something in my life that's worthwhile. I didn't know it was going to get this big, but I thought at least I'd have a nice house and a nice car and that kind of stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Maybe the guy that I worked for, his mother, his name was Gurley Smith.
Mm-hmm.
He came up poor just like me.
Yeah.
Used to walk 10 miles to do something. There's an article in the book about him. Walked 10 miles back to make $1. He got so helped everybody. He got so much money, helped everybody in Morgantown. Fine man. And he and I were pretty good friends. I said, well, if Gurley can do it, how come I can't do that too?
Well, that's great to have somebody like that as well. And I know that you've been a mentor to a lot of your family as well. How many kids and grandkids do you have at this point, Grandpa?
Well, 3 kids alive.
All right.
And what do we got in grandkids? 5. And then I got some great grandkids too, as well. Yeah. They're all great people.
They are.
I love them all.
You've gone from a life where you were living in a very poor house, very poor conditions, to at some point in your life, you were able to buy your home and write a check for it.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of that was working hard and saving your money.
That's right.
And Grandma helped you with that
I
a
was,
lot,
I
too.
was going to mention that my Ruth was a real helper.
You know, one of the things that I always noticed, too, was the great relationship that you and Grandma had. So can you offer some wisdom about what it takes to have a really strong marriage?
Well, the love about it is the greatest thing, I guess. And of course, I think you generate love by living together and trying to make a life together. Now, my Ruth, she helped me a lot, but like anybody else, she makes mistakes, you know. Well, my philosophy was don't condemn her for making a mistake. Tell her it was partly my fault. I should have told you about it. And she'd say, you shouldn't have had to do that. And it's how knitted things like that hold you together. Yeah. Yeah. It was love unconditional.
And I think both of you said to me at one point that you always tried to meet each other more than halfway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I noticed about you, Grandpa, too, in your relationship was that you doted on Grandma.
Oh,
You had the approach that you wanted to spoil Grandma as much as you could.
I did spoil her. Of course, she didn't have any family. Sharon was her first child, and to love those kids is unbelievable the way she take care of them.
You guys had a great marriage, and I know we all miss Grandma terribly. So, Grandpa, thanks so much for taking the time today. For the audience, if you want to get his current book, it's called Butler County Memories by Elmo Lincoln Martin. You can find that on Amazon. And his book that will be coming out in the fall is Kentucky, the Sweet and Bitter Land, and that'll be out in the fall of 2022. I hope this was an interesting episode for you. If you'd like to ask a question to be used on the air, you can go to richesrevealed.com. You can also leave us a review. Until next time, be one of the good ones.